Monday, November 23rd, 2020, 6 o'clock, for the Susan Power Lashley Board of the 1887 building. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ask Mr. Kelly to call roll, please.
I'd ask Mr. Truant if he could handle the notes today.
Just like autopilot.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Fisher.
Here.
Mr. Gayhart.
Here.
Mrs. Ingersoll.
Here.
Mr. Bartell.
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Here.
Mrs. Ray.
Here.
Mr. Scarrow.
Here.
Ms. Grokowski will be joining us later. Mr. Reed.
Here.
We do have a quorum. We will continue. I will note that this meeting has been noticed per state statutes. Do we have any community participation?
I did not receive any community communications. I don't know if there's anyone on remotely. I don't believe so.
Not hearing any, so we'll dispense with reading that, and we'll go to the West Side Elementary student presentation.
Hey, I know that Mr. Kitzler is on, as well as Mrs. Bornheater. And Mrs. Bornheater, do you want to speak to the presentation before I hit play?
Sure. I was asked if I could speak about some of the music updates at Westside this year, since music looks vastly different than it has in previous years. So I just wanted to present some of the modifications that we've made this year. And yes, I'm going to say it, that COVID has been a little bit of a blessing in terms of music, in the way that we've had to make many changes, and a lot of them have been for the better so far. Challenging, frustrating, but for the better. So I wanted to share some of those updates.
And if I could just pipe in for a second, for those of you who don't know, my first major was music education. And I was a percussionist, so I stayed away from all the singing. And just coming back and seeing all the hands-on, all the creativity, and all of the innovative ways to teach music has been fascinating, exciting, and just kind of reinvigorating. So, you know, all the credit goes to Maddie for sure.
Thank you.
Anything else before I begin?
In good old Amy G fashion, feel free to speed it up while you watch.
Oh, we won't. I won't do that.
Totally laughing over that one, Maddie. Thank you for that shout out.
No matter how many times I recorded it, dang it, I just couldn't get it to 10 minutes.
Okay. Here we go.
Oh, there's no sound.
Jason, we're not hearing sound.
Yeah, no sound here.
You're not hearing the sound there?
No. Are you
Not here.
I'm hearing it. Sounds great on my end.
I was trying to read lips and it wasn't doing very well.
Oh. Let me check my meeting settings, see if there's something in there. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Matt.
Can play it on my own.
Yep.
Oh. Came through his mic.
If anyone knows the magic solution, let me know. Well, I could let someone else share the screen and let Paul try, see if it works on his. Okay. Paul, do you know how to share your screen?
No, but
Jason, do you want me to do it from my screen?
Sure, try from your screen, see if it will work that way.
Okay. Just might take a minute to open up here. I have the wonderful spinning wheel of death up here.
Are you able to share from here, though?
I can, yeah. We'll see if Maddie can get back.
right, Loom is opened. Man, if this doesn't fully make you understand how the kids feel when they're virtual learning,
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Otherwise, we could go to restart and someone or myself could hit play at the exact same time. We could have a countdown and you could show it on yours and you could hear the sound through my microphone.
I think this will work, or Bill can, yeah.
Let me,
Yeah.
let me try from the district office, Maddie and Jason.
Okay.
Let's see if this
Go ahead. You're hardwired, so that may be better too anyway.
might work a little.
Hi, I'm Maddie Bornheater, and I am the music specialist at Westside. Thank you for having me virtually tonight to share with you some of the 2020 Westside music updates. I think we can all relate a little bit to this picture. 2020 hasn't quite been what we thought it would be, and we've had lots of changes within the music department specifically. So I just wanted to talk about things that we've done and changed this year. And surprisingly, I can honestly tell you that these changes have been such a blessing, a challenge nonetheless, and incredibly frustrating at times, but really have been a blessing. And I'm here to tell you why. We've been taking a lot of safety measures, and I've been blessed with a room that's large enough to where I can space the kids out about 5 feet apart, sometimes even a little bit more in different areas of the room. And that's been really helpful because then I can stay teaching in my own space where I'm comfortable, and where the students are comfortable. It's nice for them to get out of their homerooms and into the different specials rooms too. Change of scenery, it's good for everyone. The new change with instruments this year is when we're playing barred instruments, they have their own mallets, and they're simply pencils with cap erasers on the ends, and they sound pretty much like the mallets I would have them share anyways in class. So that's been great and very budget friendly for when they lose them and caps go flying off. So new this year, I'm rolling the instruments to and from the students. They're not touching any part of the instrument at all. They're only holding their mallets. So they can still work on the proper mallet technique and proper mallet grip and hold. And we don't have to worry about sanitizing and spraying the wood instruments because those chemicals are really harsh for wood. Some of these videos I will skip, and you can feel free to view them at your leisure. Some of them I'll just play for a few seconds at a time. This song was called I Can Sing a High Note, and we modified it to I Can Play a High Note instead. So even when they don't have an instrument in front of them, they are still doing the activity up in the air. I apologize. I don't know how to fix it, but every time I try to change slides, the video will start again. So I'm sorry about that. Movement. This is so important this year because these kids are being asked to be in the same spot, in the same seat almost all day long, and it's so hard for their bodies. So we've been doing a ton of movement, and I always just say, keep your feet in your seat. Or they're allowed to move around their chair as well, and they really like to be able to do that too. So you'll see a couple guest stars in the background, Mr. Wells and Mr. Silvera making an appearance during this video, and the giggles are just amazing. The kids love seeing other staff members and admin come in and poke their heads in during the day. They get a good kick out of it. This is a video game beat exercise, so they're to keep their feet to the beat. And there are other actions in there like clapping, and it looks like a video game. So then there are times when they bend down and touch their toes, but it looks like they're supposed to be scooping up and collecting coins, or they're supposed to reach their arms up over their head and collect the coins up high and jump. They have to jump over these little mountains, and it's all to the beat of the music. I know you want to see Mr. Wells and Mr. Silvera, so I'll show this video. At the very end, Mr. Solera goes, "Oh, I'm out on that one," and Mr. Wells says, "Yep, me too." He did not want to do the touch your toes and jump to the sky. Instrument kits, composition beat sheets, and listening logs. So each student this year has their own individual instrument kit, and I love it so much that they're going to keep them K-5 as long as they're a student at Westside. They'll have their own instrument kits, and I'll collect them at the end of the school year so they have them for the following school year. They have ribbons for movement, 2 spoons that click on back to back, and it sort of has a metal sound until I get the jingle bells prepared in the next week or so. Egg shakers and guiros, which they use one of their pencils to scrape. 2 pool noodles, which sound exactly like sandblocks. 2 mallets that they play the barred instruments with. 2 corn dog skewers for rhythm sticks. A cup for drumming and for what would normally be cup passing activities, but they're just doing it at their seat. And then a dry erase marker and an eraser. They have beat sheets. We've been doing tons of composing and practicing with rhythms. And on the flip side, they have listening logs. The students are pretty good at filling out the listening logs, and then they take a picture on their Chromebooks and send it to me virtually, so that way we're not changing paper. And yeah, it's been great. I can't thank the families enough that helped me put these together over the summer, because it's a lot. Another item that we've been using this year, and I have enough for 1 grade level right now, so each grade level is using them for a month, and then I let them sit for a couple weeks, and then we rotate. So tennis balls have been huge. It not only practices hand-eye coordination, but right now 2nd grade is practicing keeping the pulse with half notes instead of quarter notes. So it's not every beat, it's every other beat. So they're doing a song called Bounce High, Bounce Low. And I have about half the students doing it at a time, just in case the balls go rolling away. So that way other students aren't, trying to pick them up and hand them back to the person. It just kind of helps contain the chaos sometimes. And here's what this one looks like. At the very end, I have them hold them up. If there's any extra bouncing or tossing or catching or anything like that, they know the balls go back into their instrument kits right away. Halloween boom whackers. Boom whackers have been so fun this year because they're very easy to sanitize and clean. And I just have 1 grade level a day using them. So that way, if we sanitize them, they still then sit for 24 hours before the next class would use them. So in this activity, they're doing a skeleton boom whacker dance, and it's teaching form. So it's teaching a bunch of things. They're reading notes, they're reading pitches, they're reading rhythms, they're learning different techniques with boom whackers, and they're learning form. So the A section is when they're playing their boom whackers, and then the B section is very drastic when the music changes. They stand up and they mimic some of the skeleton poses and dances. So if you get a minute later, go ahead and check that out. It was one of our favorites this year. Adapting partner or group activities. Keeping partner and group activities was really important to me because it teaches teamwork and cooperation, and it also holds the other team members accountable for steady beat. So this one, they had their shields on, but they asked to remove them for the 30-second video. I said that was fine because they kept hitting the shields. So this is normally a hand clapping game, and we are using rhythm sticks instead to do the touching and the clapping. They learn the activity individually at their seats. Then they have about 1 to 2 minutes to practice as a group, and then they have 2 to 3 minutes to do the activity. So they're face-to-face, less than 5 minutes, and back to their seats. high and down low, but we modified it so that way they could stand a little bit further apart. Happy birthday. We adapted with sign language. We also have a deaf student at Westside, so that really helps with inclusion, and he got to do some of the teaching, which was fun. And this one, we sang happy birthday to my mom. That's for the video. All right, outside music class. Now I know that it's not going to apply for too much longer, but anytime it was nice outside, we went outside to sing, and I still had them sing with their masks on, which they were fine with. We do a lot of activities outside as well. Glowing with fun in music class. This is something that I would have thought of for performance, maybe not just a day-to-day lesson in class, but man, they had fun with this. So we went down to the cafeteria and we did an activity where I kept a steady beat and they had to copy my actions. I was super impressed with the amount of engagement and participation when I asked for other volunteers to come up and be the leaders. It was a much different atmosphere. It was darker. You have cool glow sticks in your hands. I mean, that makes you already feel empowered. And so almost every student came up individually and came up with different ways to keep a steady beat for the class, which was fun to see. I've done a lot of adapting my lessons this year in pre-recording so that way I can sing without my mask. So the benefits of that, students can see my face, they can see how I form my lips for vowels and consonants, and it's a seamless transition for subs. So even though I'm not teaching virtually live, I'm still teaching virtually by leaving all of the lessons up on the board. And the sub just has to go through and click on the links for the students to follow along with. This has been great, and I think, pre-COVID, I never would have thought to do this, and now I would never think otherwise, because it's not very often that I have a sub that knows how to read music or play piano or feels comfortable singing, so I can still teach the lessons, and my students aren't behind or missing out because I'm providing alternative instruction, so this has been really nice. A lot of work, but very nice. And with Wicker Venn diagrams, oh my! It's in the beginning I talked about it being a blessing that this is a pandemic, which I mean, no one would consider a pandemic truly a blessing. However, my teaching relied heavily on my ORT and Kodai background, which is instruments and singing. So we did a ton of singing and reading. And this year I've taken a step back because we can't sing, but we do a lot of humming instead. And it's allowed me more time and more flexibility and more freedom to try other things, including implementing more than just one avid strategy a month. I can really crank through them and see what works for kids and introduce them to different ones. Venn diagrams have been our favorite by far for comparing and contrasting different pieces of music. So they start by taking just 2-column notes. This one didn't do it in columns, but that's okay. And then we go ahead and we put it into a Venn diagram. We talk about, okay, here's something different between number 1 and number 2, and here's all the stuff that is the same. And then the older grades, 4th and 5th grade, have been doing 3-part Venn diagrams. It's fun because not only do they get to hear lots of different music, for this example, it was the same music for all 3 pieces, but it was visually different. So we talked about different parts of music and art, like still frame and animated, and black and white and color and different things like that. So it's been a blessing, I say that with caution, to modify music and teaching so much this year. The kids are doing a really great job in being flexible, and stay tuned for the virtual Veterans Day program. Yes, after November 11th, because I have been in quarantine since October 28th. But nonetheless, it's virtual, so it'll get done and it'll get sent out, and it's something new. And I've had a lot of support from not only my team members at Westside, but from administration as well. So thank you for all you guys are doing to help support the music programs here in Elkhorn and all of the crazy and exciting changes. Thank you, and I hope you have a great night.
Well, I have to say one of the things I missed the most for like the last 8 months is having the student presentations. So even though it's virtual, it's pretty neat, and it's good to see the kids again because we're not allowed in the buildings, obviously, so we're not seeing it that way. So that was really, really nice. I appreciate putting that together. Anybody have any questions for Maddie?
Yeah, I just want to thank Maddie as well. I think it gives a good example of some of the creative things that the staff are doing to, make it as safe as possible for students to be in the school and still continue to learn. And it may look quite different, but they're still getting engaged and enjoying the experience. So thank you, Maddie, for all of your efforts.
Thank you for all the support and for having me tonight.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have our minutes. We have regular and closed session minutes. We passed out closed session to those of you who are in attendance in the room. Any questions or comments on those? Otherwise, we'll do them separately. So looking for a motion for the regular session.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the November 9th regular school board meeting minutes as presented.
Is there a second? Second. To move the second to approve the minutes of the November 9th regular session school board meeting as presented. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Fisher?
Barbie, still on?
Yes. Sorry, I was muted. I muted myself so I don't make noise.
Mr. Gayhart? Yes. Mrs. Ingersoll? Yes. Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yeah.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
He's still out. Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Motion carried. Now our closed session.
I move to approve the minutes of the November 9th, 2020 closed session board meeting as presented.
Is there a second? Second. So moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the November 9th closed session school board meeting as presented. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Fisher?
Since I have that read them, I'll say abstain.
Yes.
Mr. Gayhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Abstain.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Reed?
Abstain.
Motion carried. General and other fund bills, Mr. Bruin. You got those there.
General and other fund bills this evening covers checks number 141424 through 141541, wire transfers 445 through 467, ACH checks number 133 through 153, and option renovation wires 440 through 444, and the combined amount of $794,246.91. Then there was a memo providing some additional information on several of the bills in your packet, and then a copy of the October Treasurer's Report followed the bill listing.
Questions for Mr. Trun? Hearing none. So looking for a motion.
I move to approve the general and other fund bills of November 23rd, 2020. Check numbers 141424 to 141541. Wire numbers 445 to 467. ACH check numbers 133 to 153. And options renovation wire numbers 440 to 444. In the combined amount of $794,246.91 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the general and other fund bills of November 23rd, 2020. Checks number 141424 to 141541. Wire numbers 445 to 467. ACH check numbers 133 to 153. And options renovation wire numbers 440 to 444. In the combined amount of $794,246.91 as presented. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Fisher.
Just gotta take yourself off.
You're on
Oh,
mute.
yeah.
Mr. Gayheart.
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll.
Yes.
Mr. Martell.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mrs. Ray.
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow.
Yes.
Ms. Krakowski. Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Motion carried. Proposed modification to the 2020-2021 school calendar. Mr. Teva?
Hey, as we discussed at the last board meeting, we talked about integrating some additional days off into the school calendar, taking what were some of our, for a lack of a better term, overscheduled days or extra days that we build in for inclement weather days, and integrate those into the calendar. In looking at our minutes, we actually had more time booked into the calendar than we originally that I originally anticipated. The middle school and the high school have 8 days built in for inclement weather days. The high school, if they were to continue the early or the late start days, they would have about 7.5. So this calendar represents embedding 5 days off on the second half of the school year, which would give more respite to the staff and students. They would be intended as, just like we would on those inclement weather days of being actual days or time off. And we spaced it out so that every 2 to 3 weeks there would be an additional Friday off in that calendar. Fridays are our busiest or how do we put it? Not the busiest sub days. They're the days that are most difficult for us to get subs into the building. So then it adds to the stress of the staff because they have to cover for each other and fill in the additional slots. So putting the days on Fridays makes the most sense because it can alleviate some of the difficulties in filling those sub slots.
Jason, I'm just looking at the calendar. I don't think the link includes those days.
It doesn't, we can't.
No, it doesn't.
You don't think the link what?
The calendar that's linked to the board agenda does not include those 5 days. They're not highlighted.
Yeah, it looks like they're highlighted in yellow.
Oh, they are. You're right. That's why I couldn't.
So they're just listed as no school holiday break. So you've got, okay, the January 1st is already on the calendar. So the first one would actually be February 5th.
Mhm.
And then going over to March, there would be 2, March 5th and March 26th. In the original calendar, it didn't have the Friday before spring break, but that is the Friday that is the worst day for subs. Subs don't want to sub that day, and we have a lot of people who get sick that day, apparently. Then April 30th and May 28th.
Okay.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Pella about it? We talked about this in the last meeting.
I'll move to approve modified 2021 school calendar as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the modified 2020-2021 school calendar as presented. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart.
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll,
Yes.
Mr. Martell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow,
Yes.
and Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Motion carried. All right, suspension of board policy 345.13 final examinations. Kind of talked about this as well.
Yeah, we talked about that previously before as well. We didn't take any formal action on that because it wasn't a part of the agenda, but recommend that we suspend final examinations, which are part of board policy, for the remainder of this 2020-2021 school year.
Any further comment on it from anyone going on board? Hearing none, looking for a motion.
I was just wondering, Jason, if you had talked anymore to the administration or staff.
Yeah, it was actually very well received according to the administration. I know they spoke to a number of department heads and leaders, and I didn't get a single email from staff complaining that that was taken away. So by all indications, it had pretty good support. I'm sure I don't know if there was anyone that was disappointed. I didn't hear anything negative to that, but they were pretty agreeable to it and appreciated it for the most.
Anything else? Hearing none, looking for a motion.
I'll move to suspend school board policy 345.13 final examinations for the 2020-21 school year as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to suspend school board policy 345.13 final examination for the 2020-2021 school year as presented. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart.
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll,
Yes.
Mr. Martell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow,
Yes.
and Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Motion carried. Report and discussion items, student report, Mr. Reed. Got that?
Might want to say that again.
You got the student report, Mr. Reed?
Yes, I do. Give me 1 second for it to load.
No problem.
All right. Are we ready for me to present?
Yep.
All right. So at the high school, the girls' basketball season is fully underway, which is why Anastasia had to be a bit behind schedule today. And boys' basketball was originally intended to start today, but now it's looking like it's going to be slightly delayed. The wrestling season is underway, and the Santa Sweat cardio and strength training in the Agility Center will be starting on December 3rd. 3 of our high school's seniors, Austin Bestel, Jordan Johnson, and Noah Anzalone, all signed their letters of intent to play in their respective sports at the collegiate level. And the class of 2022 had their prom fundraiser at Culver's, which was a massive success. And they're also beginning their donations for hats, gloves, toys, and crafts towards the families of EAHS, which will be ending on November 30th. At the middle school, they have their PTO book fair, which was actually able to be in person, and it will be ending tomorrow. And they also will be distributing, along with the rest of the schools in our district, free student meals on December 19th and December 27th over winter break. At Jackson Elementary School, they announced their 12 days of student council dress up fun from December 3rd to December 18th. They are having their students bring in quarters to donate for Hope Now. And their students learned about the origins of Thanksgiving, and the 5th graders went on a scavenger hunt around the school. At Westside Elementary, 3rd graders got their new Chromebooks. Kindergartners added their Thanksgiving feathers to their teachers' doors, which is something that they do yearly. And they also had a student-made PBIS announcement about respect, which is actually kind of fun to watch, not gonna lie. At Tibbetts Elementary, students created their classroom wish list, or teachers, not students, created their classroom wish list for students to bring in needed class supplies. And the PTA is gifting teachers $50 Amazon gift cards to use for their classrooms, which will be given out before winter break. And then at Options, I was unfortunately not able to find a whole lot. However, they will be having a field trip to Timber Ridge Water Park on the 11th and the 17th. And the last day of their flag tennis practice will be on November 16th, and that is now done for the school year. And that is all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby.
Options renovation update.
Okay, there's been quite a bit of work done at Options. It's hard to believe in just a little bit over a month they will be done. It's really starting to come along, and they have a lot of people on site working. So a lot of the metal work around the building, you can see if you go by there that the curb and gutter, as well as the base layer of the asphalt, has been poured. And that's in place. That's the new sidewalk walking up to what would be the high school entrance on the south of the building. That's the main entrance as you walk in, the office space and that lobby area. New bathrooms, and we punched a little bit of a design change in the building, because as they went to go out to the playground in the past, they'd have to walk through the gym. That's really hard on gym floors and a slippery surface over time. So there's a little bit of a remodel. So I believe one of the locker rooms, correct, Bill and Paul? And then we punched a corridor out to the back, so there's a more direct entry out there. Let's see. Yeah. So this is the locker room being installed, which I don't know how many people knew there were locker rooms there. This is the exterior windows, and they're really going to be a large. I'm excited to see that portion done. I think it's going to be gorgeous, all the natural light that's going to come into the rooms. And if you remember those walls, they used to have little tiny windows, because I think in the 70s, early 80s, it was really common for energy efficiency to go and take out the old windows and replace them with panels. So this is going to really open up the rooms. There's the new high school bathrooms and the walls. You can see the block work's pretty much finished and completed. And yeah, they're moving right along. Paul or Bill, anything you guys want to add?
No, just looking really good, and they are doing a great job in a short period of time, that's for sure.
Yeah. And we are under budget by about 10%.
And that's a good thing.
So far, yeah. All right.
One of the things we're also looking at that wasn't originally thought of was putting in more of a canopy into the front entry area.
Oh,
Because we have that added drive that we originally didn't include. So I know they were looking at modeling kind of similar to what we have at Jackson.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to kind of draw that up, see what that looks like.
yeah. Yes, thank you for adding that.
All right. COVID.
Okay. Bill, I have a lot of the links embedded in the board notes. Do you want to switch over and have me drive from here just on this top? Oh, you've got it. All right. Why don't we go ahead and start with, I like this view better anyway. So if you could pull up the dashboard, and we did update our dashboard to include, we had some questions in regards to what are the total number of students? Can we include those who are quarantined outside of that are not a school exposure? And originally when we set the system up, we were really focusing on what is happening within the school. What does that dynamic look like? We had Web EOC add a button in there where we can identify whether the exposure took place outside of school or in school. So this dashboard represents that. This would have been updated this morning. It gets updated every day at 8 o'clock. So it'll be updated today, tomorrow, Wednesday. We will not update it on Thursday and Friday with the holiday break. But this gives you an idea of where the number of cases in each of our building. Again, these are active, confirmed, positive COVID cases. And then if you go over to the column, maybe, Bill, you can show with the mouse, the number of individuals currently quarantined due to school exposure, and then number of individuals currently quarantined due to outside of school exposure. And then that far right column, which isn't as critical because those are done cases for the most part, but that's the total number of cases that each of those different facilities or locations have had. As you can see, and this isn't a surprise because it fits with what the national trend is, and what they said is that high school and middle school age students are more likely to contract the virus for a number of different reasons. One, the way their immune systems are set up, they're more like the adults. Two, also their activity levels, their close proximity to peers and or within the households. What we have found, though, and knock on wood, to this point, we don't have a single known case of a individual who got quarantined due to a school exposure. So that's that column, to the left of where Bill's at, where it's 72 at the high school. And then down in that column, we have yet to have someone who's been quarantined then test positive due to that exposure at school. Within the households, we have a lot that get quarantined due to the household exposure, and then they can't isolate or separate because of that. And it makes sense. They have that ongoing exposure and they end up testing positive. What we are seeing more of, though, and I cannot be as certain, is we are seeing more cases of COVID pop up where they don't know where the exposure came from. So while we can't point to it being a at-school exposure, we also can't completely rule that out in some of those cases either, where it's more of an unknown. And I'll just share, for example, my son tested positive today. We're not certain, where that, there's a couple potential exposure locations that we can think of, but we're not certain. He wasn't quarantined before he became ill. So if you could go back to the board notes, Bill. Yeah. Bill put together a summary chart over time. I think that this data sheet does a really nice job of showing kind of the trend and how that has gone. One of the reasons why we shifted to the remote when we did is looking at our Web EOC numbers. We saw, as I shared in my message to the parents, that upon return from break, I felt like just the timing of people coming back, if we can limit the number of exposures, especially within school, that we could potentially get the total number of students and staff out due to quarantine under 100 by the time we return from break. Now, that's to be determined how many people get exposed at home. But you can see, if you can scroll down to the dates there, Bill, we've had a tremendous rise since that end of October. Just in that 2-week period, it's exponentially grown. Good news is we have seen kind of a plateauing of that. The bad news is that plateauing is, at a very high rate, and that's kind of where we're at in the county. This mirrors the county's trend as well, and this is what's being mirrored within the schools all around. Again, a lot of the COVID exposures and cases are happening within that community. And so you end up, when you have that higher prevalence in the community, you see it within the schools as well. The blue and the red line, those are the number of students who have tested positive, and the staff is the red. It doesn't, you have to take the red builds up from the blue, not from the very bottom. There's not more staff that have been out sick than students. Let's see if you can go, and this pulls the data from WebEOC, so you can go back to the board notes. We won't dig into if there's a question on anything, just stop me. Yeah, we'll skip the WebEOC dashboard. Let's go to the county dashboard. Because the WebEOC dashboard is really that chart that Bill put together. He pulls that data straight from the WebEOC dashboard. So this is the county status right now, and in our meetings with them, the county's at a very critical level. One of our healthcare systems reported they had a 1 to 3 day supply. So I don't know, it's reporting yellow, which would be 7 to 14 day supply right now. The bed and ventilator capacity is below 35%. It's in that range where, well, they're listing it as yellow between 35 to 50%. It's really close to that 35% mark is what they had shared. So perhaps that got a little bit better. And then my guess is at the very top on the epidemiology, we must be yellow there because we were so high. Once you get really high, it's actually relatively easy to then drop down slightly and get into the yellow because, that number of cases within the county was so high to begin with. If you could scroll up, Bill, I want to see. Let's go down a little bit. I want to see. We need to go. This has changed slightly. We want to go to their dashboard.
Oh, I think that's under the, go up a little bit though. Higher, all the way up to the top. And then go to county COVID.
There you go. Walworth County COVID-19 data. Click that. And then community, go ahead and click on the community dashboard first, and then we'll go back to the school dashboard. Okay, and this is really good news that we see this active confirmed cases is listed at 414 today. I've seen that as high as 680. So that's good. To give you an idea, though, when we started school, that was at 35, roughly. 35 to 45 was when we started school. And I had a lot, when we'd have people ask me, what are you doing? You guys are crazy. Why are you going back to school? And I could say, well, we only had 35 to 45 cases. The county recommends that, it's okay for us to go back to school. We're at a moderate level. 35 to 45 cases wasn't considered low. That was considered moderate. Our positivity rate was up above 30% in the county. It's at 24.45%, which is really high. Still, it's not as bad as some other places in the state, but it's still pretty high. I think something that's also very interesting is, and it's kind of an indication of when people are going in to get sick, is if you look at the cases asymptomatic, that means they went in, they tested, and these are the people who said, oh my gosh, I had no symptoms whatsoever. I can't believe I tested positive. It's only 7.5%. So in reality, it's when people are going in and when they're testing positive, they usually have some symptoms. They're reporting that. But we do know there is that contagious period that they feel that 48 hours before symptom onset. But there shouldn't be large numbers of this asymptomatic spread. At least we're not seeing that in our region, but up to almost 8% are still asymptomatic, or at least reporting that they were asymptomatic. You could go back to the school district dashboard. Now you'll remember this is they modified this report and they went ahead and put it up on their web page now. This is just a few weeks ago. For our first weeks of having these reports, we were in the moderate level. You can ignore Burlington and Palmyra Eagle. I keep telling them to take that off because those are just little slivers. But I think it's interesting that where that little sliver of the Burlington area boundary is within the county, that's about where we were a few weeks ago, is where we had between that 10 to 19 range. 20 or less is considered moderate. We're now at 137 and 50 cases within our school district within per 10,000. We have 235 confirmed cases within our school district population boundary, which puts us at the most critical level within the county, within our school district boundary. But as you go down through all of those other schools within our county, they're all well within the critical realm. Again, above 20, the county considers within that critical area. Okay. And then you can look and see what are the different breakdowns of the ages for those different, the infection rates and so forth. And you can see still that the very large number, that 35 to 60. Of course, that's a very large age range as compared to 15 to 18 is only a 3-year span, and 10 to 14 is only a 3-year span. So the way they break that out, per age, 10 to 14 and 15 and 18, maybe quite a bit higher, as opposed to that 35 to 60, which is a 25-year span. Okay. We can go back to the board notes. So go ahead and share this. So I wanted to share with you the county released notice on late Friday afternoon that they are moving into a return to phase 1 guidance. Yes, I didn't realize they were in phase 1 guidance before, but in the summer when we went into the lockdown, and ironically, when the numbers were much lower, but also we were much less prepared to handle positive COVID cases, and we didn't know as much about COVID as we know now, we were in phase 1 guidance. Phase 1 guidance has a number of different criteria. I'm not going to go through all of those. In a nutshell, it's limiting gatherings to 25%, 50 to 25% depending on the facility type, utilization of contactless virtual services, curbside delivery, and for schools, their original recommendation in phase 1 guidance recommendation is for schools to be remote or virtual only, not to have the face-to-face contact. So in conjunction with this, we had a couple meetings with the county, and when they also sent with this letter a memorandum, if you could click on that. And in the memorandum, what it really goes through is that in the county, and I'm just going to summarize this in a nutshell, the county is experiencing very high rates. They are concerned because the hospital capacity is reduced, and they feel that it is, the community spread is out of control. It's not contained, it's not controlled. They refer to it as out of control, and that's why they feel like they need to move to that phase one. They acknowledge, and I think that's as we talk to them, they recognize how important schools are. They acknowledge that they don't have specific data that identifies significant spread within the school buildings. But they're deeply troubled by the growth in new cases experienced by the community at large. Despite obvious risks, we anticipate many families will choose to traditionally celebrate during the holidays. Our contact tracing demonstrates an undeniable link between close household contacts and transmission of COVID-19. So one of the criteria that the county would need to have to, by law, close schools would have the data showing that this significant spread was occurring within schools. And they acknowledge they don't have that. So they're saying we legally can't shut you down, but we're asking you to, I'll go into the paragraph up above that to give you the specific request. Maybe I should have just read the whole letter, but it says, with the move to phase one, we're recommending that schools pause face-to-face learning and transition to a remote approach beginning on or before November 30th and lasting until at least December 6th, which is that first week after the Thanksgiving break, since that is the earliest that a revision from phase one could possibly occur. There is, however, significant concern about increased COVID-19 exposure during the holidays. As such, delaying in-person learning through Monday, December 14th would be prudent application of the CDC's 14-day quarantine period to help reduce the risk of an outbreak in the school related to holiday exposures. So phase one, they've only laid out that we'll be in phase one for 14 days, then they'll reevaluate it. How are we doing? They may pull us back out of phase one, or they may need to re-up that window of staying in phase one. So that's what they're asking all school districts to consider is, at a minimum, they're asking us if you would go remote through this first phase one cycle to December 6th, and if possible to stay remote through December 14th to give 14 days after the Thanksgiving break. And again, in a nutshell, if you scroll down, Bill, they do reiterate how much they want the kids in school, and they recognize that ultimately the decision to choose in-person, hybrid, or remote learning is the responsibility of each individual school board. We recommend that you temporarily transition to virtual learning to slow the spread of COVID-19 in the community. We recognize that you all have unique community-specific factors to consider, and they're committed to providing us support regardless of what we decide to do. If you could go to the board notes, Bill, and I'm just going to go through all of this and then we can have a discussion. Wanted to share with you where the other school districts in the county, what we're doing. And again, this link is in there. This is all of the K-8s as well as the unified school districts. It's all over the board. A lot of them are meeting. They're in the exact same position as we are, meeting with school boards to discuss how they want to handle it. There's a couple school districts that, like Bigfoot, because of their COVID numbers that they have in their high school, they were already planning to close through December 4th. They were kind of seeing that number trend like we were. And that they're looking at, well, we can go ahead and extend it 3 more days without difficulty. Some of them you'll see, like Geneva, Joint 4 Woods, they've already decided we're going to shut down through January 4th. It's really all over the board depending on the school district. I would say the larger school districts with the high schools, Williams Bay is also likely going to close down through December 7th. They were already going through a few days into that first week in December. And I don't have a good sense for East Troy. It wouldn't surprise me if they go ahead and go virtual till December 7th. Lake Geneva, they're going to meet as a school board on that to make a determination. But they felt that their data at this point, as far as the exposures in school, would support continuing with the face-to-face. So it's kind of all over the board. This gives you an idea what each of them are doing, though, and you have access to that. I just ask you not to type in it because they did set this. I didn't create this document, but they just shared it with the superintendents and set it at the edit. But you see Delvin's also meeting tonight. She was pretty confident that her school data, the number of cases in their buildings were pretty low and that they could have the students in face-to-face. We can go back to the board notes. And then I asked Bill this morning to contact the insurance company with our updated memorandum from the county and ask them in regards to this county's recommendation, what does that look like for us in regards to a liability standpoint and or a coverage standpoint. And they reiterated, and we've heard this in a lot of legal seminars, but this is a specific letter or memorandum that they looked at. So I thought it was good to have them look at that. And they said the only thing that to jeopardize our coverage would be to willful violation of a published order, ordinance, or law. Guidance alone does not constitute an order, ordinance, or law. So should the school board decide not to follow the local health office's guidance, coverage would not be impacted. So we have coverage either way. The next bullet point is there may be, however, a negative impact to potential liability for not following the local health office or published guidance. The courts have not weighed in on the question of discretionary immunity and its exceptions, including known and present danger and COVID-19 decision-making. As such, we do not yet have a clear determination about whether or not this COVID-19 decision-making constitutes an exception, thus expanding the potential for liability and a removal of immunities. If you do not act or your act doesn't go far enough in the face of a known danger, the courts have in the past set a standard that this would be a violation of mandatory or ministerial duty, thus removing immunity. What that means, and I've been in enough legal seminars with Boardman and Clark as well, is that there's no case law on this matter yet, but there is a strong possibility that the court could remove the district's immunity and say there was a known danger, you didn't go far enough, you didn't follow your local health office's recommendation, therefore they can sue you, and we're not going to consider you to be immune from those, to have that immunity from suit. Similar to, we kind of set that landmark state Supreme Court case in Elkhorn when we had an accident in the school and we got sued, and the court ruled it was the simulation goggles. And they ruled that, well, you should have known that that was a potentially dangerous situation. The kid tripped, fell, got injured. Therefore, the school district was liable for the costs, associated with that accident. So that's what they're saying, is that the immunity may be gone, but they don't know because there hasn't been a court case on it. Boardman and Clark also would point out that even, all right, you might have insurance this year, they might represent you going to court, and even if you lose in the court case or there's a settlement, you may get covered, but they very well may drop you the following year because you kind of ignored a known danger. So that is from the abstract, that's how the lawyers have structured it or stressed it. We do not have legislation in our state granting schools immunity. Other states do have legislation, and that would kind of make this a moot point. Like Ohio did pass immunity for education institutions, basically saying by state law that you can't sue them for anything related to COVID. It would be difficult to prove that the COVID was contracted within school and that was the location where they did contract it. But that's just, want to give you in a nutshell what the lawyers are saying, what the insurance company said. So with you, that gives you a pretty big ballpark picture of where we're at. I did share, if you'd go down, Bill, the next piece is our reopening guidance. And, as I struggle and I look at this and, what format should we be in? I think the big factor that kind of changed this original guidance, because if we look at that original guidance, it's that substantial, uncontrolled transmission, which is where the county feels we're at. We're at that critical level. And we originally identified that, that would be when we would be in that remote learning. Now, we looked at, even before getting to this point, we had conversations with the high school. I did last week. Do we feel from what we're seeing in the dynamics, would being in hybrid give us any benefit? And at that time, we didn't really see that as a benefit, at least significantly. And one of the other factors that the county always shared with us, though, is this is just a guidance. And what we really need to look at and focus on is what's actually happening within your building. Are you seeing, like Johnny, who is sick, go to school, expose 10 people, and then within those 10 people, someone else is getting sick? And that's what we're not seeing, as the county indicated, the data showing that there's outbreaks within that school environment. What we are seeing, though, is stressing on our staffing, as we have a number of people quarantined. I got quarantined today. That's why I'm here remotely, because I had a family member test positive today. And every time you have a staff member out, that just adds that stress to the system. It's very stressful to go through not just the quarantine, but then also the illness that they may have. And that's going to happen with the community spread regardless. But that's where we're at from the different levels. This is what we looked at originally. If we were basing it off of the county numbers, we would be at that critical level. And we do have a recommendation from the county. The caveat, though, is we're doing so well with the kids in school, and we're not seeing the spread from the exposures within the school setting. However, again, there may be a few that we just can't trace and that we're not aware of. So I've been doing a lot of talking on this and that topic, but I wanted to lay everything out for the school board, kind of what we're looking at. We did close schools to the online learning for today and tomorrow, again, hoping that the numbers would be down by that Monday timeframe. And then the county recommendation did come out. So I kind of wanted to get your impressions. The motion that we set back at the beginning of the school year in adopting the reopening plan did authorize me to move through the levels, but I want the school board input in regards to what your thoughts are and how to proceed.
My thought comes from some anxiousness about that one table where we're the highest rate per 10,000. Jason, can you speak to, is that an important number for us to recognize, and the fact that we're the highest rate per 10,000?
Yeah, I think what it means is that within our school district boundaries, there's a strong prevalence of COVID, and it significantly increases the risk of exposure within our community. So, and again, it's, to be frank, I mean, this number could flip the next time they update it to where we could be where Bigfoot is. But the reality is all of us are within that critical level. But yeah, you're talking, there's 235 cases within our school district boundaries. So it's the higher that number is, the more likely it is that someone's going to come in contact with someone else with COVID. And that's what we're seeing within our high school and middle school setting and our elementaries as well. And typically when the kids are getting it, in almost every instance, well over 90% of the instances, it's because someone within the household, an adult in the household, had it, and then they got exposed to it and they got sick. We have seen a handful of cases where it's been like a sleepover party. But what we're seeing is it's for the kids, it's sustained contact that they're having. So I don't know if that I think that answered the question, Ed. It's definitely with the numbers that high, it's greater chance for people to come in contact with it. I think one of the reasons why the county wants the schools to go to online is to limit that potential spread. But I think they also recognize that, hey, I get the feeling, these are my words, I get the feeling that they feel like the people in the community aren't taking it serious, and that perhaps schools going online would help people realize how serious it is.
Yeah.
Well, then, I acknowledge the plan that we worked so hard on, that mainly staff worked so hard on it. If we're at that critical level, that's what our plan says to do. I guess I don't know why we're not recommending right now to do what our plan calls to do, because it is a real situation out there. And if that helps people understand the seriousness of it, maybe that's what we all just need to do. That's my thought.
Yeah. And I look at it, this is a window to reinforce how critical we are. And we can't control what happens outside the school. And you can be assured this Thanksgiving break, a lot of exposures are going to take place because people aren't adhering to the guidelines that are out there for our communities. With that being said, we are risking so much not knowing where people have been to come back immediately. I would like to wash and give ourselves a window. And my comparison is, I can't control where you play. And if you go play in the mud, at least if I give a window for you to clean up before you come back, the chances of you interfering with others is minimized. And I think, like the other schools, I think we should go and get into the early December and possibly even reevaluate right then to see how are those numbers contracted, and do we have to extend it, or can we come back at that point? But I definitely think we want to use this, how critical it is, get everybody to get on board with the guidelines and try to adhere to good policy, and not do as we please. Because I just was informed this week that two people associated with my family just passed from COVID. And it was within 10 days, one on the 15th, one on the 20th. So, and neither one was sick before that. And it just hit, and here you are. And so I want to minimize that. I don't want to see anybody go through that.
To me, it doesn't make sense to go remote and then restart on the 14th for 1 week. That makes no sense to me at all. So if we're going to make that decision, then I would propose that we go remote through the end of the school year, or the January through
the term,
the calendar year, and then try and come back in January. But it makes no sense to me for 1 week to go back face to face.
And whatever we do, we also have to, and I know this is very, very touchy, it has to be even with our extracurriculars. We can't say we have to take a break from class, but we're having extracurricular, because that just is jeopardy as anything else.
Yeah, Janesville made a really weird decision. They voted 6-1 to go to remote learning, but they're still having extracurriculars and playing sports. So they voted for no, virtual school, but then still have sports. So that seemed very odd to me. But
I think
I've really been all over the place on this. I don't know. I went back and forth. Should we stick with it? Should we? There's a lot of downsides to both things. So,
I agree.
You don't stop. Does it just continually get worse? If we
the CDC has actually put out an article on Friday saying that kids still need to be in school and it's the safest place for them to be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the county acknowledges in their letter that they don't have any evidence of spread
Exactly,
within school
right.
buildings. So then my other thing is, you know, if we do pause, you know, will everyone, I mean, we, like Paul said, we can't control what people do outside school,
Correct.
and that's fine. But will they actually, you know, not get together, or are they just gonna continue to
they're
spread
just
it
going to
outside?
continue doing the same activity as they're doing now. Their behaviors are not going to change.
We can't control that, but we can control the fact that they won't get into our buildings because we won't have people in them. But that's basically all we can do.
Right.
All we can do. And I feel bad because there's a lot of kids that just aren't gonna learn as well in the, I mean, our staff is wonderful and they're gonna do an amazing job at virtual if this is what we do.
Right.
But there's a lot of kids that don't learn as well in that virtual situation. So we're gonna, you know, kind of tie their hands behind their back here. And there's some kids that honestly are safer in school
Yes, they are.
than they are at
Yep.
home. And that's very sad to say, but it's a reality and we have to just.
On more than one level, not even just COVID related.
No, that's what I mean, not even just COVID related. So it's not an easy decision either way.
Right.
But at this point, I guess my opinion is Walworth County has suggested that we at least give them the 2 weeks, that we at least give them the 2 weeks. Now, your comment about the extra week probably,
Right.
you know, it probably makes sense if everybody feels that way.
Right.
But in my opinion, I think to go against the health department's recommendation is just, we've always said, even when we were discussing, you know, the masks and everything else, everything associated with this, we said, well, we try to follow the county's guidance because they're the experts. I'm not a doctor. You know, if you want a tank fixed, I'll fix it for you, but I don't know anything about COVID-19. Other than what I read.
I think Barbara's gonna try to say something.
So I think that's what I'd like to do. Go ahead, Barb.
I wasn't going to say anything. I kind of feel the same as all of you guys. I was just going back to the calendar and I was trying to figure out what the orange days were. I don't see a color associated with that. Yeah, I don't know. I think we need to follow the guidelines we have with us because they're more the expert than we are. I mean, obviously. And I know there's children who are in school, or if they're at home, they don't have the assistance. The teachers can reach out so much. You have 3 kids in a household and everyone's trying to jockey online. If internet is compromised, it's good to have them back in school, but we need to follow the guidelines. And I believe the mask mandate just came back again until, I don't remember. So again, we need to follow what's going on medically, I think at this point.
And regardless of what we decide, if we want to go to the 6th or 7th or to the 14th, I think we want to communicate very openly that we're going to reevaluate on the 6th, but the potential to the 14th or whatever, so that people don't like, oh, now you're going to throw this. So tell them that prospectively, this is what we're looking at. If the numbers come back in our favor, we'd like to get them back as soon as possible, and we could move it back to the 6th or 7th. But probability is it's going to be, I don't know what the answer is, but I don't want people to, you know, go through the childcare and things like that, and then all of a sudden we throw another ball their way, and it's like, well, we weren't ready for this. So get them ready for the worst, and then.
Does that start a new term? When does the new term start? When does the next try start? Jason, you're muted.
4th is the last.
You're muted, Jason.
Jason, you're muted.
Jason,
you're muted.
You're talking.
Sorry, I dropped and then got back on. For some reason it dropped me. So the reason I wanted to be, you know, really proactive and take the Monday and Tuesday off is I was hoping to get the numbers down to where we could be comfortable coming back for that last 4 days of the term, because the term does end that first week in December. And then the high school would really love to have the kids back in for, the start of the next term. What the feedback we heard from teachers was it was really hard to start new classes remotely for kids. They did it last year because when we went to remote, it was right at the end of the term and start of a new term. With that trimester schedule, we finished the last 12 weeks off. So the timing is such that this term is ending this first week of December. So if we were to follow the county's recommendation, and I guess my feeling, I'd like to hear from Jenny and Kevin as well, but for right now, I don't think I would extend it beyond what the county's order is, and then that would give us time to reevaluate. I agree, prep parents that, hey, we may end up having to be out the whole time. We're monitoring the situation, but the county health department has asked us to be remote or online for this time frame. I know when it comes, so I guess I would be comfortable saying, okay, that first week in December, we're also going to be remote, and see what the county has to say and see what our numbers are at the end of that point. I mean, that's 2 weeks from now, and 75% of exposures, say the families, they all get together on Thanksgiving. I read one of the studies recently where 75% of the people who are going to contract COVID will do it in 7 days or less. So that 14-day window, really, as you get further and further out, the likelihood of you then becoming sick, on day 10, 11, or 12 gets really minimal. So you should have a pretty good idea that first week of December what you're looking like. I mean, at least 3/4 or more of the cases will have popped up by then. And I'm sure the county would have a good idea. Do they have the PPE back? Are the hospital beds back up? Are we out of that critical stage now? And for all of our parents, I know how much of an inconvenience it is, and not just an inconvenience. You've got the mental health issues, the social, wellness for the kids, and the kids who, just like you mentioned, they're not going to do work at home online. It just doesn't work for them. So every day that we can keep the kids in the building is one that I would like to fight for and do the best we can. But I also can't disagree with the point that, hey, the county, our county, perhaps more so than any other county in the state, has been aggressive at keeping the kids in the building. And if they're at a point where they're saying, hey, time out, we need a pause, we need you to help us out with that, I agree with everything you guys have said. I think it'd be hard pressed to recommend going against that. But I will tell you, when the parents who are angry and they're upset and they're wanting to yell and cuss and scream at someone, and it's fine, I'm a big boy and I can take it, but they ask me, well, why are you guys going remote? And say, hey, we're working in cooperation with the county, and the numbers are bad in the county. Let's say they happen to call the county health office and they start screaming at them. The county will say, yeah, our numbers are really bad here, but ultimately it's the school district's decision whether to stay open or not. We didn't shut them down. That will be the message from the county to the angry people.
Also have a plan in place.
Yeah.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. We have to follow our own decision.
We made the plan.
Right.
Jason's just following.
Yeah. Now, the question came up in regards to co-curriculars and those activities. I think one of the reasons why a lot of schools do continue those when they're on remote is because they haven't had any cases of spread within those co-curricular events taking place. They've had exposures, but like we've had a number of exposures. Our varsity basketball team's quarantined. That's why they're out. But to this point, knock on wood, there hasn't been a case where athlete A passed it to athlete B and they got sick. And also you're talking about, opportunities that they can't replicate remotely. So that's why a lot of schools do still run those co-curriculars. And also because to be frank, it's what will pack your boardroom or your school meeting when you take those once in a lifetime type opportunities away from kids.
Doesn't work at the college level.
Those kids are doing
Okay, so what I'm hearing, kind of a consensus from the group, is that we should follow our original reopening plan. One of the things I guess what's different now than from the shutdown is we're not legally being ordered to shut down. So I know questions that will come up is, can we provide, tutoring groups, small support groups, in-house things within the buildings? Can kids come in, to do some work in the shop class if they voluntarily want to come in and do that? Can we do the co-curriculars and hold that? My feeling would be, being primarily remote, is a good thing, and that mitigates most of the risk. I would like to allow for those other supports and those things to continue on. But if the board, if all of you as a whole feel more that no, we just need to shut all of that down and take a pause through December 6th, I'm okay with that as well. But that's one of the questions that will come up. It even came up for Monday and Tuesday. Can we bring in our reading intervention group if they want to come in and get that extra support? Now we can space out and there's more room there. Thoughts on that, if in that regard?
I'd like to see them continue because I think those services are important, and giving us the ability to, take as much precaution as possible. I think that can be successful.
Are you talking educational ones or co-curriculars and sports?
All.
I think that's,
Yeah,
to be honest.
I guess I'm happy to leave that to Jason too. I guess I would like to voice my opinion that we just go through, if we're gonna follow that guide, just try and take it through that. Resume classes on the 7th of December face to face so that we can see where our numbers are at and try and get those 2 weeks in of our, starting the new trimester face to face. And I would not be in favor of, doing it just for 1 week at the 4th, on the 14th. We can get 2 weeks in and get those 2 weeks in of the new trimester. I'd be okay with that.
Can I just also add that if
We don't need a motion. It's his decision.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just expressing my opinion.
Yeah, I like your opinion.
And as far as kids come down in the shop and things like that, I think that's great. However, once you open up that can, then there's no rules apply to all. And I think you have to be as consistent as possible, and either we allow it for everybody and have everybody and expect everybody, or we say, no, right now we're on a timeout and nobody. I know it's tough, but you don't know which lottery ticket's going to win or lose. And I don't want any of them on that table.
All right. So Paul, your recommendation would be shut it all down through the 6th.
Yes, that would be mine.
Okay.
And also the extracurriculars. And I know that's tough, but when we can only control what we can control inside, and we don't know what they're bringing in. Let's try to get a revamp on those numbers and find out exactly where we are after people either do strictly adhere to the guidelines or don't. Because if they don't, it could explode and we'd really be in trouble. And just because you're with extras doesn't mean your family and your exposures are going to be less. So
I guess I have a hard time shutting down the education part. And not that we're shutting it down, but moving that virtual and then saying, but co-curriculars and athletics can keep going.
Right.
Where are we placing our value? Right.
Well, I think it's a hard message to say our coaches can come and wear a mask, but our teachers can't.
Yeah.
And I don't like the message it sends.
I don't either.
Right.
I think actually it'll be more relaxed during our co-curricular activities because there'll be less people in the buildings. So I have a very hard time saying that we're not gonna
teach our kids face to face. We're not going to give them meals
Right.
face to face.
Right.
For all the families that need that, and then need the transportation for the co-curriculars, need the busing,
Right.
and then say, but if you have the ability to come at your own will,
Yeah.
by all means, our doors are open to you.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah. I don't either.
All right. So I'm hearing pretty much overwhelming, unless someone wants to speak to the other point, but pretty much overwhelming that consensus, go ahead and shut it all down.
Barb, what do you think? Thanks very much.
My only problem right now is like I'm okay with co-curriculars. My only problem right now is though I keep hearing reports that everything's crowded for Thanksgiving. Everybody is going to meet with their families. They're getting all these big groups together, and that does concern me because again, we'll be bringing them back in, putting them, not only them, but the staff at risk, and we're tight on staff as it is. But I would like to see academics, however we can handle the academics, at least keep that going. And I know some of the kids need those co-curriculars to keep them involved, but I just have really concerns with the Thanksgiving holiday.
Okay. All right. If there aren't any other comments, I think what I'd like to do then is I'll prepare a message to families. I'll let them know that in light of the county's recommendation and their request to the school districts that we will remain in our remote learning model at that critical stage through December 6th, that we'll reevaluate at the end of that week. I'll ask them to prepare for a potential extended week after that if the numbers don't come down. But that we'll target to return to school on December 7th, and that we'll be in communication with them in regards to what format, during that week of, I guess it's November 30th, we'll let them know and make an assessment as to where we're at on that Thursday or Friday. And I mean, the county, I'll be in contact with them as well, and they'll be looking at their numbers. My hope is that we could return on the 7th, at least in a hybrid model for 612 and face-to-face at the elementary, and go to that middle tier intervention that could return a sense of normalcy and at least have some of that face-to-face contact for that first week of the trimester. And that week off of November 30th, it's not really off. They're going to be doing remote learning, but it'll also give us an opportunity to pivot and make sure that people have the resources. Okay, but this gives people more time to prep too, as I can get that message out to all the families tomorrow and, give them the heads up ahead of time. And we'll let everyone know that for that week that, we don't want any contact in there. And I don't think we'll get, when you have an entire, like the whole varsity squad, to be frank, is probably quarantined up through almost that date anyway on the boys basketball. I think the programs, they'll see that and they'll get it. And they may be better off anyway, not running the risk of that exposure during this time frame when it's really hot, and knocking them out from a quarantine. Not because I'm not really worried about any of the varsity players getting sick or, from that exposure, but being quarantined for 2 weeks is a huge, there you go, until December 2nd. All right. Thanks, Toby. Toby, we didn't hear from the students. I'm curious, what are your thoughts, Toby, from the student perspective?
Sorry, give me 1 second just to make sure it's quiet.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
I understand the concern surrounding it, considering the fact that obviously our basketball team already got quarantined. So I think it is probably in our best interest to look at taking more preventative measures.
Okay, and does that timeline sound like a reasonable one to you to start with, is take it week by week?
Yeah, because obviously I do still want to have in-person school as well as like extracurriculars. But I think to stay the safest is the best. So we should take it week by week in order to come back as soon as possible without any risk to making the problem worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I look at it, we want to be proactive rather than reactive is the best way to look at it.
Yeah. It escalated really quick. Hopefully we can knock it down really quick. And I don't want to jump right to, well, we're going to take 14 days after Thanksgiving, because then from a logical standpoint, because then we're just, speculating that, well, this is going to happen. There's going to be travel. There's going to be exposures. Therefore, we got to take 2 weeks off. Well, then if someone asks me, well, why don't you take the first 2 weeks of January off? I'd have no logical explanation as to why not. Well, you took 2 weeks off after Thanksgiving. So I'd like to really base it off of that county recommendation. What are the numbers? And, if we run into the holiday break and we see something similar going on, we very well may have to do that as well because of the amount of travel. But I'd like to take it kind of week by week and leave that hope there for everybody and get in as much as we can. I know that's not as convenient for some parents, but you know what? They all have the choice to flip the remote at any time they want and stay on that. If someone says, well, I just want to be remote through the holiday break, that option is there and it's on the table for them, and they can go ahead and do that. We're structured that way for them. So I think this gives us the best hope of getting back and at least looking at that.
Get them in.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Jason, with that extra week off, what can we do with the meal program and feeding? I know it's is there...
Yeah, I think Bill and I will have to talk with Ellen tomorrow and see. We couldn't do anything Monday and Tuesday because you got to have the right type food in for that grab and go.
Right.
And so I don't know, maybe that we'll talk to Ellen tomorrow and see if there's something that we can figure out for that. She does have, it'd be really hard for her to get the supplies in. She does have the meal pickup planned for the holiday break. I don't know if she can pull something together right away for that November 30th, but we'll take a look.
Thank you.
All right. Sounds good. I think I got what I needed, unless there's any other comments that anyone wants to make. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. I think it's one of those times. It's a really important decision, and I appreciate you letting us spend the time on it. I feel good about it then.
I just always point out, like, this board functions really well. This is a really, really intense topic, to be honest. And even though we had some differences of opinions of how we wanted to do this, but we came to a pretty agreeable point. So I'm impressed with that. Anyway, go ahead, Jason. First reading.
These are the first reading of new and revised policies. I'm sorry. Let's see. This policy, we're recommending striking the line that the parents will ultimately have the final authority over determining grade level placement. No offense to the parents, but we don't want, it's really not consistent with our early entrance policies and so forth. And the way that's worded is that a parent could just say, well, I really think my kid should be in 4th grade instead of 3rd grade, and so forth. So we're recommending striking that. And then updating this policy to include the new anti-discrimination language as we go through and modify those policies. So that's it on the school admissions. And just so you're aware, we haven't had that problem with a parent using that policy against us to just say, yeah, no, my kid's going to be at this level. So it really hasn't been a big issue there. Okay, the student code of conduct. This is something that we legally need to have in place to identify when students can be removed from a classroom and or from school. So this is a lot of new language. If you could scroll down through that, I encourage you to look at it. Some of it's boilerplate, but we took our existing policy and went through and basically made sure that we met the criteria that was needed within the legal requirements. And a lot of this really comes from some of the special education case law that's been out there, and challenges to a kid being removed from a class in school districts just not having pinned down clearly enough the reasons why someone may be removed from class. And really, what I always try to express to the principals, if they're disrupting the learning of others, if they're not safe for disrupting the learning of others, then they can't be in the classroom. If it's somebody who's putting their head down and sleeping, they're disrupting their own learning. That's something we work with, and there may be a lot of things going on in their life that might be causing that. But when they're disrupting the learning of others and not safe, then we need to remove them. This talks in a nutshell, not a nutshell, in much greater detail, a lot of criteria related to those removals, and really pretty much reflect the practice that we're already doing. It's just putting it to paper. So I'd encourage you, if anything comes up, and these again were ordered from the policy committee, so if there's anything that comes up between the first and second reading, let me know. And then we just have the proposal to delete these, as they're already covered in the handbook and the other hiring process. And they'd be covered in the new policy here as well. We did put in here, just so that some are aware, and this is how we handle our professional staff as well. The fourth paragraph, all current Elkhorn Area School District staff members will be notified of coaching positions. Positions will not be posted if the head coach and or assistant coach continue in their appointed positions. Basically, we handle those postings just like we do. If I have a fourth grade opening, we'll put that out to the teachers to see if there's interest in a qualified person to go into the fourth grade opening. It's not a guarantee that, Sally wants to go to fourth grade, that we'll move her to fourth grade. But if it's a good fit, we'll shift her to fourth grade, and then we'll post for the position that's open. And we handle that the same way with the extracurricular activities. Okay. Any questions on any of those? All right, it's just the first reading, so no need for motions. Personnel recommendations, we have quite a few. We have a couple of resignations, Molly Collith and Eric Larson. We want to thank them for their work as an avid tutor and a boys basketball assistant coach. We have quite a few hires. Paige Drummond is a special education teacher. She'll be replacing Kara Scala. We're very excited to welcome Paige to the school district. Yep, you're not reading it wrong. Shannon Swaney would like to rehire to her previous position and welcome her back. We're really grateful to have her back and return to that role. What was she gone for, Bill? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So Shannon does a great job. We're excited to have her back in her role. She really missed us a lot. So then we have John Espinoza as a custodian at Jackson, Robert Wiedenhoff as a custodian at Westside, Tom Lee is a boys basketball assistant coach, Avery Rios as a boys basketball assistant coach, and Chase Searcy as a boys swim assistant coach, and Courtney Christian as a cheerleading assistant coach.
Questions for Mr. Tadlock? I was looking for a motion.
I move to approve the personnel recommendation sheet for November 23rd, 2020, including new employment contracts, conditioned upon passing the background check and district mandated drug screening as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved and seconded to approve the personal recommendation sheet for November 23rd, 2020, including new employment contracts, conditioned upon passing background check and district mandated drug screening as presented. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart. Mrs. Ingersoll,
Yes.
Mr. Martell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow,
Yes.
Ms. Kukowski,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. School gifts. One this evening, Mr. Tadlock, Ms. Schaefer.
All right, let me pull up we have, Joanne Schaefer has donated 80 Gill hurdles to the high school valued at $15,760.
Wow.
I want to give a huge thanks to Joanne for that donation.
I remember when she used to come to the Booster Club. Can we get 10 this year? Can we be getting 10 a year? So when I saw this, it blew me away, and I'd like to give a big thank you to Joanne.
Yes. Huge thank you. And how about all the springs that she was in the shop fixing them?
Yes.
Yes. Oh.
I feel bad. I didn't know our hurdles were in bad shape.
Well, I think she said they were in bad shape forever, so.
Forever.
Well, do we have a motion to accept?
Oh, so moved. Gratefully accept.
Yes. I'll second that.
Moved and seconded to approve the gift from Joanne Schaefer as presented.
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart.
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll,
Yes.
Mr. Martell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Scarrow,
Yes.
Mr. Kukowski,
Yes.
and Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Motion carried. Announcements.
I am all announced out other than we've got one board meeting in December on the 14th, and just wanted to check and see if the noon on the 14th that that'll work for the policy committee meeting.
Yeah, that's fine for me. Barb?
Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, I already have it on my calendar.
Okay, great. And Ms. Grakowski, since you just made it, how did the basketball game go tonight?
The game?
There's a practice tonight.
Oh, was it a practice, not a game?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay. Now, as far as the school board is concerned with the plans and the schedules, I know the county order starts on, they asked us to start from that Thanksgiving break. Is it okay to go ahead and run the activities as planned tomorrow?
I think so at this point. My opinion.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have more contact after the holidays.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and run it, and we'll start the remote. And I mean, I know we're remote, but we'll start those new restrictions from Thanksgiving through the 6th then.
Sounds good.
All right.
Anyone? In a second?
Well, before we leave, I would like to bring up, I don't know if everybody's aware, but one of our old middle school social studies teachers, Mr. Don, has passed. And he was very, very embedded in the community and was a wonderful teacher. And I would question, as a district, would we like to extend something to the family to show our appreciation and express our sympathy towards what they're going through?
Yes, we can take care of that. Bill, can you make note? And
Yeah, we usually do for family and past employees, so that.
Yeah, and then I don't know how many people were aware, but he just passed, so.
Right.
all right, thank you for sharing that, Paul.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second, roll call vote.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart,
Yes.
Ingersoll,
Yes.
Mr. Martell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Bray,
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow,
Yes.
Ms. Kukowski,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Go home. Motion carried.